Good morning.
Good morning, Ed.
What are you doing all day? What are you going to do all day today? It's 9/11, commemorative remembrance services and things. Milford has something tonight at the Doubletree. What's on your schedule for today?
Well, of course, I'm starting with Ed Thompson on Daybreak News.
What a thrill, huh?
But no, we're actually going here. I'm going to meet up with my House counterpart, John Fernandez, down at the Senior Center for a little ceremony with some of the veterans there at 9 o'clock. Right after that, we have a ceremony at the Hopedale Draper Place. They have I think ever since the year after 9/11, they've had a very moving program for the residents and others, anyone who's there involving the police and fire, and usually a school group and several of the clergy from town, and John and I, and usually the town administrator or others, commemorating the tragedy of 9/11, which is really worse, in a way, it's worse than the famous Day of Infamy in December 7th, because that was an attack on primarily military installations, where this is an attack on innocent civilians, so it's even worse. And of course, more people actually were killed at that event, in 9/11, but ultimately, of course, more people suffered in World War II. But it's certainly important that we remember it's an opportunity to remember the good things about our country and the fact that we are independent and that we have our liberty, and so it's important to remember the sacrifices of those who were the victims, and particularly the victims who were police and fire, who had gone in to try to rescue those victims. So it's a solemn ceremony, and I think it's important that we do remember that issue. And it's a form of terrorism is still with us today in the world, and certainly a threat to the United States. Later, I have to journey up to Worcester to the College of the Holy Cross to receive an award from the Adult Day Health Association, honoring me for my support of adult day health programs. People might see the vans around for Blair House or Beaumont or others, driving around, bringing people from their homes to the particular center for good nutrition, for health checkups, for a little socialization with other residents. And it's a good program that really helps keep people who are generally homebound to get out and make sure that somebody's kind of keeping an eye on them and making sure that they're staying healthy and that they get a good meal. Later, actually, we end the day tonight at the Doubletree. Mark Shane has for a number of years now, I think pretty much as long as Hopedale Draper Place has done their program, honored what he calls his Thanks to Yanks dinner, honoring first responders and our military for their efforts over the last decade and beyond. Very important that we continue to remember.
Representative Ryan Fatman, your opponent in November, have you had any interaction with him as yet?
I've heard rumors of him being around.
He hasn't been around for a while, I don't think.
Well, I'm sure he's doing some door knocking. He seems very persistent at that. The problem is he may be a nice young man when he approaches the homes to knock on someone's door. But whatever he's promising, first of all, why didn't he do it in the 4 years that he served in the House to take any action? He has yet to get a bill that he was the primary sponsor through, actually even out of committee, I think, and certainly not through the House or Senate.
So he files stuff, but it just sits there?
He files stuff, and I guess in a few cases he testifies on it, but he seems to spend most of his time campaigning for the next office rather than learning the job that people elect him to do. And I think that's unfortunate. People expect senators and representatives to do their job. Now he has a 100% roll call record, as do I. But that's only part of the job. The final votes, when you get to a roll call, 95% of the previous work has been done getting that bill ready, moving it through. You've got to move it along. You've got to ask the chairs of committees or others to explain your bill and move it forward. He has yet to get anything in the budget for the district that he serves, or anything. He tells people he's for more local aid. Well, that's fine, but if you vote against the budget, as he does at in the final budget, then he's not providing more local aid. We in the legislature.
Aren't all of you in favor of more local aid?
I think so. I don't found too many people that wouldn't vote for it, but he doesn't, because he doesn't support the final budget. We were able to this year, and I was very much in the leadership of increasing funding for regional school transportation, a promise the state made years ago when regional school districts were formed. It certainly benefits, this significant increase this year benefits Blackstone Millville Regional School.
Yep.
It benefits Mendon Upton. It benefits Blackstone Valley Vocational School, and any other regional school in the district. By voting against the budget, he voted against that increase in regional school transportation aid.
What's the point in him, do you think, voting against the final budget? It gets him nowhere, because it's going to pass.
It's going to pass because by the time it's worked the way through conference committee, there's a lot there that people support. Sure, there's always something in any budget that's, $36 billion. There's some items there that, if you really had to vote on that individual item, maybe you wouldn't vote for it or vote that much. But I'm told he said to someone that he voted against the budget because there was some funding there he thought for illegal aliens. Well, he voted for the budget when it was in the House, and it had that, whatever that funding was, it was the same there.
Yep, same money.
And yet then he voted against the final budget. So it couldn't have been that, even though he may proclaim that, because it's a politically sexy thing to vote for in many cases these days. So it's, I don't understand it. I don't understand why he's moving on to, try to climb the ladder before learning the job that you do. People tell me they call him, he doesn't get back to them. I don't see him at events. I'm at just about every community event that I possibly can physically get to, and even sometimes I send somebody else to get to one while I'm at another. But I think that's important, to go to those events. One, to pay respect to whatever the organization is that's holding the event or whoever's being honored. But secondly, it's an opportunity to meet people in the district on a more casual basis, where they can talk to you about what they believe, what they don't believe, what they are upset about, whether they have specific needs that they need to get responded, and we try to respond to that.
They can talk to you about almost anything at any time, even though the event may not be conducive to that. They can pull you aside and go, Senator.
Sure, and they do that, or they can at least make arrangements to see me after the event or another time, and that's why I go hold these coffee hours around around the state and around the district. Seems like around the state sometimes. But it'll be at Johnny Jack's coming up, I think next week, and that'll be for, I think it's usually 8 to 9:30, or sometimes we're there at 7:30. It'll be in the paper, and we're moving around to the district. I do that all the time. It's not just the campaign. When I do it all year long, and I attend these events all year long. I don't just show up at a month or so before the election. I've been going to a lot of these things year round, because it is important to honor the folks that are holding events, and it's very important, I think, and it's an opportunity to learn what's on people's minds and try to reflect that when I vote. This
group, Mass Fiscal, has sent out several glossy flyers besmirching the voting record of Representative John Fernandez and Carol Dykema, representative from the Hollis and Hopkinton area.
And me.
And you, really. Is it distortion? Is it outright falsehoods?
It is certainly distortion. Some of it tends to be false because it characterizes what in some cases is a procedural vote as if it was a substantive vote. But people need to be very skeptical of that mailing in particular, because the leaders of that group are all active Republican activists. One of the policy people in the group was Representative Fatman's former aide. The chairman of the executive director is a member of the Republican State Committee. The chairman has given some significant dollars only to Republican candidates for the legislature.
Where are they getting their money?
Well, often it's from people who have a lot of money themselves. It's part of that 1% that would like to not only get all the money in the world, but to run the world in the process. They are folks that have money, and they have an agenda. Some of the races here, mine, John's, other Democratic races, are being impacted by big money donors who have given their money through groups like the Marlboro Republican City Committee, the Sutton Republican Town Committee. If you look at their filings on the website, you can see that it's really a handful of people that each give the maximum $5,000 a person. Usually their wife also gives the $5,000 a person. And it adds up, town committees are notoriously have, a couple $100 if they have that.
Correct.
This, Sutton had over $60,000, and it's really a slush fund for certain candidates, and my opponent's one of them. They've also gotten money from PACs that the Office of Campaign Political Finance have determined to be illegal, improper. One by Chanel Prunier, who's a Republican, I believe, National Committee woman, who set up 3 supposedly independent PACs that, in order to process money to Representative Quiros and Representative Fatman and Representative Durant and others in this area. And it's some of it's technically legal, a lot of it's really simply laundering money. And with Mass Focus Alliance, we don't know who all their donors are. That's something that the law is changing.
Yes.
That
just passed, right?
Yes, in the campaign finance, so that in the future we'll be able to get that information, and the public will know that this is a special interest group, and it's not a nonpartisan or bipartisan group as they advertise. They are clearly targeting support for Republicans in opposition to Democrats.
Are they sending these things out to Republicans too?
I think they send it to everybody, but they don't skewer everybody in the process. They'll look for questions that Republicans have uniformly voted the way they want to vote on the issue they choose. And that Democrats may or may not have voted, but so they're not going to know. Very few Democrats, if any, I don't think any that I can think of, have gotten 100%, as all Republicans do. Somebody
gets one of these glossy mailers. What would you tell them to do?
I would tell them they could ask either Representative Fernandez or me, what the story is, because it has this casting votes that we actually in the final analysis. I'll give you a great example. One of the scorecards has me voting against putting photos on EBT cards. Well, I voted for it. I did vote against an amendment that didn't have any money to do that during a budget debate, but we already were planning and had a comprehensive welfare reform, and photos are now being put on EBT cards, and we supported that both in the House and the Senate.
So they take your vote, and it may be a procedural vote, or they may take another vote and really twist it into a falsehood.
They take in, if you go through the thousands of votes actually over the last several years that I've cast, and I'm sure John has cast, and others, you can pick out a vote that you don't agree with, but it may not have been a vote that really ultimately meant anything. It didn't become part of the final law or the bill. And so it's important to look at what's the bottom line. I support welfare reform. I support getting rid of fraud and abuse in welfare. I supported the final bill that did that and attempts to do that. And so, I think it's misleading at best. Even if the individual item is technically correct, it's not the whole picture, and it doesn't explain it to people that way.
What is a procedural vote?
Procedural vote is, for instance, to recommit the bill to a committee, to postpone.
Maybe a show of hands. Is that fair?
Well, show of hands would be more of it's a standing vote.
Okay.
Usually would be, or a voice vote, but it's a procedural, and it's just one good one that's possible. In fact, when I presided in the Senate, I've had it a couple of times, doubting the ruling of the chair. And so it's a technical thing which almost invariably, I don't think I've in all my time in the legislature I've ever seen the chair overturned, because the majority supports the chair is of the majority, and the majority supports them. And on procedural votes, you're generally expected to stick with the Grand Knight, basically, and follow the rules. So a procedural vote might be to say that the Speaker or the Senate President rules some amendment out of order. Then the minority party will doubt the ruling of the chair, or there might be some back and forth explanations and discussion, but doubt the ruling of the chair, and then that's a recorded vote. And so they make it sound like it was the substantive issue, when in fact the vote was a procedural to support your leader.
Well, they did one of those with the with local aid. Yeah. In this, it was a procedural vote to open up the discussion about increasing or decreasing local aid again. You voted no on that.
Well, we actually didn't have that one. That was a House vote. The House leadership chose not to get into it.
For John, they did, right?
Yeah, so they used that. I'm sure some of my Democratic colleagues weren't thrilled that the Senate President was very generous to the minority, very small minority in the Senate, to let them offer just about anything. There are only a couple of things that were off base. And because on a budget, it's a pretty wide open area of discussion. But it's inside baseball basically, and they know it, and they're trying to make people think that that's really our position when it is only a slice of time that was a particular vote, but the final analysis and the final position that we both took on some of those issues were ones that the public, I know, would support.
For or against expansion of the bottle bill?
The Senate has voted for it, so I support that. It's been one that I think will finally see its time to come, although there will obviously be a good deal of advertising and debate for and against whether that should be done. I don't think even with the expansion it doesn't solve all the problems it does deal with by expanding it to cover like bottled water, which is a lot of that. But I think we still need to find a better way to deal with litter on the roads. That a lot of it's paper rather than bottles or cans. But it's one that I've supported. The Senate's voted I think now 4 times in favor of the expansion.
Senator Richard Moore, thanks very much.
Thanks, Ed.